Good morning, everyone. My name is Doris Rodriguez, and we'll get started in just a few minutes while we give people a moment to get situated. So if you need to get anything, please do so now. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. I also want to assure that this presentation will be available with automatic closed captioning. Additionally, we are providing simultaneous interpretation in Spanish this morning, for which I will now provide instructions for our Spanish Zoom attendees to join. Hoy siempre brindamos servicio de interpretación simultánea para nuestros eventos, igual en personas o en Zoom. Favor de hacer clic en el globo al fondo de su pantalla donde dice interpretación. Luego haga clic en el idioma que dice escuchar, en este caso español. Si quiere escuchar solo al intérprete, puede también hacer clic en Mute Original Audio, que silenciará el audio original. Muchísimas gracias y de nuevo bienvenidos a Sinergia. Estamos agradecidos en tenerlos aquí. So I'm just going to switch over to live. Alrighty. Before we begin, I want to let you know that we'll be broadcasting today's event live via Facebook page. So I want to give a warm welcome to those joining us there. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone who registered via Zoom will receive a copy of the presentation slide via follow-up email within the next few days. A survey will be shared in the chat at the end of the presentation. We will have time at the end of the presentation for Q&A, and we encourage questions at any time. However, please remember this is a public forum, and we're being broadcasted on Facebook. Again, my name is Doris Rodriguez, and I'm the Autism Initiative Coordinator here at Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center. A few words about Synergia's initiative. The Autism Initiative Project is funded by a grant from New York City's Council under its Autism Initiative. This project supplements the work of Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center by bringing an increased awareness to New York City's residents, particularly to the communities with large Spanish-speaking populations, about the growing number of children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. A strong outreach component targets families of children with suspected or known diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder who are not receiving appropriate educational, health, and other related services. This initiative will link them to other services and supports to meet the individual's needs of children and their families. I want to thank you all for joining us. We are glad that you chose to be here with us today. For those joining us after the presentation concludes, the presentation will have, as mentioned, a Q&A. So if you're joining us via Facebook Live, please place your questions in the comments section. Before we get into it, I would like to introduce our presenter today. I want to welcome Karen Herrera, advocate at Advocates for Children of New York Parents Center. So glad you can join us today. Now I'll hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doris. Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Herrera, and thank you so much for joining me this morning. For today's webinar training, we're going to be going over special education and the essentials of special education. So let's get right into it. All right, so for today's training, I'm going to give you all a brief introduction to AFC. We're going to cover special education law, the special education process, service and programs, and knowing your rights, so how to resolve issues regarding to special education. All right. So what is AFC? So AFC is an independent agency that protects all the rights of New York City students. So some of our services, we offer a variety of them. Our most popular is our helpline. It's open Monday through Friday from 10 to 4. If you have any questions, concerns regarding your child's education, feel free to give us a call. We can connect you to an education specialist. We also offer a language line, so language is not a problem for us. You can just give us a call. We also offer guides and resources readily available on our website. our guide to special education, guide to preschool special education, guide to suspensions, IEP meeting tip sheets, and so on. We also offer free workshops and trainings just like this one that's uploaded to our YouTube channel and on our website. And then finally, we offer free legal services to low-income families. So we offer free representation to families that meet our income guidelines. This is just a snapshot of our website, and if you have any interest on staying up to date with back to school, you can check our website for the updates. Also, as you can see, we have a Get Help tab, so you can send us a message through our website as well as call us. Under the Find Resource tab, you can find a recording of past webinars. You can find guides and tip sheets and so on, and then to learn more, policy advocacy and our litigation tabs. Like I said, we have past recorded workshops on our website. You can just go to the Find Resource tab and it should be the third on that list. And we also have a back to school webinar coming up at the end of this month. We're going to have it on the 27th in English and then August 28th in Spanish. So if that's of any interest, feel free to register on our website. It's completely free and we'll be covering any updates or changes to this coming school year. All right, so the law for students with disabilities. So there are two federal laws that provide rights to children with disabilities in school. The first one is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as the IDEA. Today, in interest of time, I'm going to focus on the IDEA, but you should be aware that Section 504 also provides accommodations for students and parents with disabilities. All right, so these are some special education laws. So like I just said, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, Section 504. I also want to mention that this PowerPoint has a ton of hyperlinks attached. So like Doris mentioned, you will be receiving a copy of this presentation. And if there are any slides that get your attention and you want to click on those links, you totally can. So for example, if you want to find out more about the New York State Education Law and Regulation or the New York City Chancellor's regulations, as well as the New York City Department of Education Standard Operating Procedures Manual, also known as the SOPM for special education, you can just click on each link to find out more. So, all right. But to briefly talk about Section 504, Section 504 outlaws discrimination based on disability. Schools must make reasonable accommodations. These rights apply to parents too. Some examples of accommodations that can go into a 504 plan are classroom accommodations, testing accommodations, nursing services, and physical modifications. So these are just some examples. We do have a guide to Section 504 if that's of interest on our website. All right. Just get this all on our page. Okay, great. So, okay, so the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as the IDEA, is a federal law that protects the rights of students with disabilities through the age of 21. It's a complex law, but the general gist is that all students have the right to a free, appropriate public education, also known as FAPE, in the least restrictive environment. We'll call it LRE. So starting with FAPE, school districts are not required to provide students with disabilities with every possible support or services. However, they are required to provide students with disabilities with an appropriate education. So all these services must be going towards, must go towards the students so that they can make meaningful progress. So they won't offer a Chevy, they'll offer a Chevy, but not a Cadillac, if that puts things in perspective. So again, the goal is to make meaningful progress so that the student can achieve their potential. So they can't offer every possible, but they must offer all of services on a student's IEP, and we'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. Now, FAPE should occur in a student's least restrictive environment, and that means a student with a disability should be educated alongside peers that do not have disabilities to the greatest extent, because the goal is inclusion. The least restrictive environment does not mean that students with disabilities receive fewer supports and services than they need, but it does mean that the support and services should come as close as possible to a general education setting. All right, under the individuals, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA, to receive special education services, a student's school performance must be adversely affected in one of the following 13 disability categories. These classifications are not diagnoses. Depending on a student's education, one or more classification may be appropriate, but only one classification will be listed on the IEP. So the 13 classifications of disability are autism, deafness, deafblindness, emotional disability, hearing impairment, learning disability, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, speech or language impairment, traumatic brain injury, and visual impairment. Also, if a student if a student between the ages 3 to 5 is being referred to special education, their classification will be a preschool student with a disability. And I just want to know, I'm not going to talk a lot about preschool special education. However, if that is of interest, we have a guide to preschool special education, and we also have recordings of a past webinar regarding preschool special education services. So if that's of interest, you can visit our website. All right, so here are some of the support and services that may be provided to a student with disability. So beginning with AT services, assistive technology is any piece of equipment, product, or system that is used to increase, maintain, or improve the functional capabilities of a child with a disability. Some examples are an iPad, text-to-speech, a communication device, or a computer. Moving forward, paraprofessionals. So paraprofessionals are there to address a child's individual needs and allow them to benefit from instruction. A paraprofessional may help accompany a student with behavioral or health needs. So some examples are there are behavior paras. So these are paras that will help a student de-escalate, emotionally de-escalate. Also, there are special transportation paras. So these are for students that may need support traveling to school. There's also counseling, nursing, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, SETs, so special education teacher support services, and SETs can be offered in a classroom or in a separate location. They can be one-to-one or in a small group. And so pretty much this means the teacher works with the student or students on academic goals so that they can make progress. And so these are just other examples. So specialized transportation, instruction in Braille, behavioral intervention plan, and yeah. So students can get these in any school setting. All right, I'm just gonna put these all on the screen. All right, so when we're talking about special education, we are talking about two things. One being a program and type of service that's been recommended, and the other is placement, the location of where the service is going to be recommended and given. So the Department of Education offers a continuum of services that goes from the least restrictive environment, which means closest to a general education environment, to a more restrictive environment, which means further away from a general education setting. So The least restrictive, like I just said, environment would be a general education placement with some supports and services. And then even more restrictive than that is an integrated co-teaching and ICT classroom, which can be a max of 25 students being co-taught by 2 teachers, one general and one special education. And then, and within that classroom, no more than 12 students will have an IEP. That recommends ICT classrooms. And then even more restrictive than that are self-contained classrooms that only have students, that only have students who have that placement recommendation on their IEPs. And so some numbers that you'll see just now are ratios. So in a self-contained classroom in a community school, there'll be 12 to 1 to 1. So that means 12 students, one para and one teacher, or 15 to 1, so 15 students and one teacher. So even more restrictive than a self-contained classroom is a District 75 placement. And so District 75 is an all special education department within the Department of Education that runs specialized supports through the 5 boroughs. So you'll find much smaller classrooms that may have 1 to 2 students at a District 75 placement. All right, and so now we're getting more restrictive. So even more restrictive than that is that the student, oh, I guess I should say the difference between a community school and a D75 school is that D75 schools can be located anywhere throughout the city. All classrooms in a D75 are self-contained classrooms. You're not going to find integrated co-teaching and not going to find general education classrooms in a D75 placement. If you look at the ratio, you'll see it's more restrictive because there are fewer students and more adults in the classroom. So even more restrictive than a special class in a specialized school, D75, is a state-approved non-public school placement. And so the state-approved non-public schools are private special education schools approved by the state for students whose educational needs cannot be met in a public school program. So usually a student, if they are receiving this placement, it'll state on their IEP. The IEP program recommendation will say defer to central-based support team, also known as CBST. And so after that, the CBST, and I guess I should say the CBST is a DOE office that matches state-approved private special education schools with students. And so this placement can only happen if it's recommended on your child's individualized education plan, also known as IEP. And so even more restrictive than that is a residential placement. And so this is for students who require services on a 24-hour basis. And the most restrictive environment is home instruction. And this is available to students with severe physical, medical, or emotional conditions that make attending school impossible. And it's only really allowed when it's medically necessary and usually requires documentation from a physician or a psychiatrist. All right, so again, we're covering a lot of information, and I just want to say that special education can seem like a very complex system, but it has a basic process that starts with a pre-referral intervention service. So if your child were at school and they were experiencing difficulties in any area of development, learning, physical, etc., the Department of Education would then at that point try to implement pre-referral services, which is a step before referring a student to special education, to see if your child just needed, we'll call it academic intervention services, and that can include extended day or Saturday programming. And so pre-referral is the step. So it's just assisting your child. And if with the additional supports, they're not making any progress, then they would get referred to special education. However, you as the parent also have the right to make a referral. So That's basically an opening of a special education case or an action taken with a special education program. It should always be done in writing. The referral must always be done in writing and can be done in any language. If you request an evaluation or an IEP meeting verbally, it most likely will not be documented. So it's very important to keep everything in writing and keep track of the dates that you're requesting all of this. So after that, you can give your consent to start the special education referral process, and then your child will receive an evaluation. And then after the evaluation is complete, you will have an IEP meeting to develop the individualized education plan. And then once that IEP is developed, you will placements and services will take place. So let's talk about referral and consent. So how to request an evaluation or make a referral. So like I said, if you want to request an evaluation or make a referral, you must do that in writing to the principal or school psychologist. You can also copy your committee on special education. You can email also the committee on special education, and to find yours, you can go to schoolsearch.schools.nyc, or you can email specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov. You can call 311, or you can visit advisionservices.org. Written consent for evaluations must happen within 10 days from referral, so you can watch for delays here. Consent must be in writing, voluntary, and informed, and evaluations must take place within 60 days from the parental consent for the evaluations. And if you need any help, you can email specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov. You can call 311. This is just a tip. You can include your consent to evaluate in your referral or indicate how you prefer to consent. You could also email us if you run into any issues. All right, so what should an evaluation include? So students must be tested in all areas of suspected disability. So social history must be taken into account, psychoeducational, classroom observations, recent physical, any other areas of concern, and vocational. So and this really only applies to students that are 14 and older. So some types of evaluations offered are a neuropsychological evaluation, a, a speech evaluation. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I jumped ahead. So yeah, so just to finish this slide off, just as long as there is an area of suspected disability, you can request in writing for a referral for an evaluation completely free. Let me just take a moment. All right. Okay, so going to the next slide, evaluations. So evaluations must be bilingual if the student uses a language other than English. Evaluations are completely free. A school must evaluate a student every 3 years, but it can happen up to once a year if requested. And parents have a right to copy, so you have the right to receive all the documents throughout this process. And yes, right. Okay. So what is an IEP? An IEP is individualized. Well, an IEP stands for an Individualized Education Program. It is an instructional plan to meet the needs of students with disabilities. It is created by a committee called the IEP team over the course of a couple of meetings, which occur in person. IEPs are legally binding, like a contract. So that means that every service that is written on the IEP must be provided. If the service is on the IEP, oh yeah, so must be provided. They do not expire. However, IEP should be updated every year to track the progress of the child. And there is no set to number of IEP meetings. So if you would like to discuss something regarding your child's educational progress, you can always request an IEP meeting. Um, so again, if you have any questions, you can email specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov or call 718-935-2007. All right, so who is at the IEP meeting? Let me just put that all there. So parents, so you are your child's greatest advocate. You know your child the best. Parents are the most important part of the IEP team. So you have the right to a 5 days notice to be notified. Also, if you cannot if you cannot attend the meeting, you have the right um, to reschedule that. Also, a special education teacher will be present, and this teacher should know the student. A psychologist, a school psychologist, and so they're responsible for explaining evaluations or changes in setting. Um, a general education teacher if the student is or may be in a general education classroom. Um, and then finally, the students. So starting at the age of 15, students are invited to be at these IEP meetings. Other people that can be there as well are parents can bring a family, a friend, or an advocate to the meeting. I also want to note that if you require any type of interpretation, you can have that. You just need to request interpretation ahead of time. So once the IEP meeting, if you want to request an IEP meeting, you can also request for interpretation to be had then as well. But it must be done ahead of time. All right, so IEP recommendations. So the IEP team needs to discuss the student's strengths, interests, needs, and goals, and consider the results of the evaluation and then make appropriate recommendations in order to best support the student. After the meeting, the IEP is finalized, and the finalized IEP should include student current levels, teacher reports, parent reports, IEP history, um, and the IEP should always be current. At the IEP meeting, the team will consider the results of evaluation, include any independent evaluations, and you should receive copies of these evaluations before the meeting. Ask your Department of Education representative for copies if you do not receive them. Consider the strength and needs of student at their present levels of performance. Determine if the child is eligible for special education services. Decide what services and accommodations the child needs based on his or her disability. Develop goals that your child should achieve by the end of the year. So goals should be specific and measurable. So a bad goal, right? An example of a bad goal would be in 1 year, Jason will be a better leader. Now, how will we know if Jason is making progress, if he achieves the goal? So a better goal would be in 1 year, Jason will be able to identify all the letters of the alphabet in uppercase and lowercase. Or in 1 year, Jason will be able to read 15 to 3-letter words. So you want to get more specific, so you can really measure your child's progress. All right, so program recommendations. So you'll receive a prior written notice, and this should describes the program, the type of school, and the services on the IEP. You should receive these documents soon after the IEP meeting. So you should receive the prior written notice, which will describe programs, types of school, and services on the IEP, and a school location letter. So this will say which school the student should attend. Parents have the right to visit the school ahead of time, and should contain a school phone number in order so you can get in touch with the school. A tip, parents should contact via email for school visits, email DOE staff who sent the letter and the offered school principal and parent coordinator. Um, All right. Oh, okay. All right, so these are just some examples of a prior written notice and a school location letter. So on the right, you'll see a prior written notice, and that should describe the program that the student will be in, the type of school, and the services on the IEP. And then the school location letter on the right will say which school the student should attend and all the information regarding the school. All right, so close that. So tips for the IEP meeting. So always ask for any reports or evaluations before the meeting. Sign and get a copy of the attendance sheet because you really want to keep track of who's there during these meetings. Get a draft of the IEP after the meeting and get the finalized IEP and compare it to your notes. So and so these are just some tips when you're going into the IEP meetings. We also have a tip sheet in Spanish as well on our website if you want to see this, if you want to just have this written out and you can bring it to your meeting. Oh, all right. So these are just some advocacy tips. If a school refuses to conduct an IEP meeting, I'm not sure why the number isn't showing up. Or the email, but I'll give you all of this information at the end of the PowerPoint. So, right, so a school will not recommend any services until schools reopen or evaluations are conducted. And schools, if a school says it cannot consider any changes to an IEP until schools reopen or evaluations are conducted. I'm not sure what happened to this slide, and so my apologies. I will, in the copy that you receive it'll show the number and the emails that you can contact. All right, so now we're going to go into knowing your rights. So we're going to talk a lot more about informal dispute resolution. And so this is how to approach a problem. Right, so if you have any issues, you can start with the school. So you can talk to your parent coordinator or the principal. If that doesn't resolve the problem, you can contact your district superintendent office, family support coordinator, or district family advocate. You can then follow or contact your borough support organization, the administrator of special education. And finally, you can contact your DOE Central Office of Special Education by calling 718-935-2007 or specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov. So you can escalate your case like that. And when escalation isn't appropriate or doesn't work, you may need to discuss other options. And if you're going to, reconvene at the IEP meeting, make sure you have additional information. So new evaluations. Oh, so sorry. Okay, wait, let me backtrack. So when escalation isn't appropriate or doesn't work, you may need to discuss other options with the parent. So, or with the CSC team. A formal dispute resolution is, okay, so if, for example, your child isn't receiving certain services or you don't agree with the IEP, you as a parent, you have the right to file for a mediation or an impartial hearing. And so a mediation is a meeting between parent and district / school representatives facilitated by an impartial community mediator. And this can be a good option if you're seeking services in a public school, a change in schools or IEP recommendations, or services from a DOE approved provider through an RSA or P4 letter, for example. It takes about 30 days to schedule, and about 80% of mediations are successfully resolved. And if you're thinking about requesting a mediation, let us know. And you can also file an impartial hearing. And so an impartial hearing is an administrative proceeding, like a trial, to resolve disagreements between a parent or legal guardian and a school about a child's special education services. An administrative law judge called an impartial hearing officer runs the hearing and writes a decision in that case. And also you can file a state complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, or file an Office of Civil Rights complaint. Right. Okay. Yeah. So sorry. So anyways, like I was saying, formal dispute resolution. So mediation, the difference between a mediation and an impartial hearing is a mediation is a voluntary meeting, an impartial hearing is a legal proceeding. Parents and the Department of Education discuss the problem at a mediation. Um, um, during mediation, an impartial hearing officer is in charge during an impartial hearing. A mediator facilitates. Parties control the outcome. Parties may still go to an impartial hearing if the problem is not resolved. So now an impartial hearing, it's written decisions based on witnesses, documents, and can appeal a decision. All right, so more of your rights. So parental rights, who to contact. So if you're running into any issues, of course, call Advocates for Children. There's our number to our helpline. You can also contact the Department of Education Special Education Office via the special education at schools.nyc.gov. You can, if you have not received a response to a referral, or evaluations are not being conducted, or evaluations are not appropriate for the student, or an IEP meeting has not been scheduled. You can also reach out if you as the parent did not receive documents to participate in the IEP meeting. These are all violations of your rights. So if you come across any of these issues, you can contact the DOE Special Education Office or contact us. I also want to note that, and this is a very important slide, so language access rights, translation, and interpretation. Parents have the right to, under federal, state, and local laws, parents have the right to translations of all school-related documents. This include documents that go out to everyone, like a flyer about the high school admissions process, and student-specific documents like report cards and the IEP. Parents also have the right to interpretation services at school-relating meetings, including parent conferences. You should not be told to bring your own translator or that your child to translate. Interpreter should be impartial/neutral, and the Department of Education has access to a language line phone conference if no in-person translator is available. So the DOE must have documents available must provide documents in your preferred language. And if you have any issue regarding interpretation services, or DOE language access complaints, you can call 718-935-2013, or you can email schools at hello, or you can email schools, or you can email hello@schools.nyc.gov. All right, so we covered a ton of information, and we hit some slight bumps on the road, and so for that, I apologize. But if you have any questions, please feel free to call our helpline or to email us or send us a message through our website. And thank you again so much for all being here. If you have any questions, I'm going to stay. We're going to pause the recording, and I'm going to stay and answer some questions if there are any. So thank you again so much for joining me today and for bearing through all the technical difficulties. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Doris, you're muted.
Thank you. Yes, so as Karen mentioned, we will now open the floor for Q&A with our presenter. So please make sure to write all your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. I do see one or two questions. Let's see. So One of our pre-registration questions, and again, you might have answered some of these, asks, what is placement?
Right, so placement means, well, placement pretty much means, class setting and the services that the student will be receiving. Unless you're meaning school placement, and then that just, I'll refer back to the school location letter. And so, placement just means the class setting. I went over, here, let me just, oh, okay. I'll bring it back. Okay, we went through some. All right, so placement and services just means where the student will be receiving the services that are written on the IEP.
Thank you. And Karen, I know that you mentioned about homeschooling, and it seems that there is somebody asked a question about homeschooling. So, what are the DOE resources available when it comes to homeschooling? This would be her first year doing homeschooling, and added that she already filled the letter of intent and parental intent to receive DOE services. So, I don't know if you can answer that on this presentation.
There's definitely more information regarding homeschooling on the New York City Public Schools website, and I can put that link right here. I'll stop sharing my screen. Actually, I can probably do it right here. Let's see. So if you are looking for more information, you can definitely find out more here, or you can call us if there are any specific problems that come up with homeschooling. But pretty much, if it's also intended to be temporary, so I don't know how long your child will be receiving homeschool services, but if you need more information, you can visit that website or you can give us a call. Are there other questions?
Yes. Somebody asked, my daughter graduated from the ACES program. However, she does not have a transition program in place. She will have to go back to her old high school as a result. Is there anything that you can advise to her?
Where is that?
Oh, I'll.
Is that in the Q&A?
No, no, no. This was one of the pre-registration questions. I'll,
Gotcha.
I'll share that with you in the chat right now.
I would say please email us, because I feel like this might get into more specific and it's not really like a general. So please feel free, whoever submitted this question, to email us or call us, because you might need more specified assistance.
Alrighty, now I'm gonna go to the Q&A in the Zoom. What can I do if my child is not receiving services due to lack of therapists?
All right, well, depending on how long your child has been without these services, well, first, the services I'm assuming are on the IEP, right? Which means that they need to be provided. So depending how long your child has been without them, they are owed compensatory services. If they're not receiving a service due to lack of therapists, you may be able to find a therapist outside of the DOE network that could possibly take a voucher, and you would have to request a related service authorization letter to receive these services at a different clinic that has space to take on your case. However, but if you would like to be reimbursed for that, or if you want the DOE to cover that, you should look into a related service authorization letter, an RSA.
Thank you. Next question. Hi, for translation services in a family's language, does this apply to the IEP as well? And I have had families be provided with an IEP but in English and have not had it explained to them in their language. I see this often.
Right, yeah, I see this often too. And so parents are, if requested ahead of time, parents should be given school documents, IEPs in Spanish, and of course should also I they can request an interpreter to be present at an IEP meeting. So that way there is someone explaining as the meeting is going on. So anyways, I see it often, but parents do have the right to request and interpret school documents in their preferred language. And if you run into any of that, you can email hello@schools.nyc.gov or file a complaint because we do have a department that's specifically for there we go, yeah. So you can file a DOE language access complaint to hello or call 718-935-213.
Thank you. So it's just two more questions, and yes, you will receive a copy of the PowerPoint slide. Someone asked if you can just explain a little bit about the process. Sorry, express a little bit about the process regarding mediation and impartial hearings that you mentioned in one of the slides.
Right, yeah, and I can go back to that because that's when okay, so going over this again, so informal dispute resolution. So before, if you would like to resolve an issue, but not file a hearing or file a complaint, if you feel like you want to just go through the chain of command, you first start off with the informal dispute resolution. So you can call or you can contact your parent coordinator or principal. If they don't resolve your issue, you then go to the district superintendent office and speak with the family support coordinator, a district family advocate. If that doesn't work, you contact your borough support organization. And if that doesn't go through, that's when we're looking towards impartial hearing or mediation or OCR complaint and that. And so just want to start off with that. Formal dispute resolution. So if going through the chain of command has not resolved the problem, you can you can request a facilitated IEP meeting to discuss, let's say you believe your child needs additional speech therapy services. You can do that at an IEP meeting. But if you're getting a lot of pushback on it, you can file for mediation. So just want to show this again. So you can file for mediation, and mediation is a voluntary meeting. It's between a parent and a district school represented facilitated by a mediator. It can be a good option if you are seeking services in a public school or a change in school or IEP recommendations. An impartial hearing is more of a legal proceeding. So if you can resolve the issue at a mediation between a parent or district/school representative, an impartial hearing could be an option as well. But this is more of a legal proceeding. There is a hearing officer. Decisions are based on witnesses and documents. Um, right, yeah. And let me just go back to this question because I'm seeing.
It would be the last one under
Right,
the
right.
answered live ones.
But you didn't still offer it. Yeah, so mediations and impartial hearings are also, they're always an option, but they must be requested by the parent. We do have a mediation and partial hearing guide that I'm going to send over in just a moment. And if you want to find out more about this process, how to navigate it, you can always email us, but also here is our impartial hearing guide. That is a very helpful tool. And again, mediation and impartial hearings are if your child is not receiving proper special education services, you as the parent have due process rights, and that includes requesting an impartial hearing. And so this guide is how to prepare and navigate that process and easy to understand language. So I'll put that in the chat. And so, um, yeah, so like I said, you can see parents try to resolve their issue or resolve the issue through an informal dispute resolution, and so that's going through the chain of command. And if that doesn't get resolved, they can file a state complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. They can also file for an impartial hearing or mediation. And I just sent a link to our special education impartial hearing guide if you want to read more about that process. And now I'm seeing two more questions.
Let me see the last one.
Right. You mentioned a related service agreement that a parent can file for reimbursement of the cost if a child is not receiving services due to what if the family does not have financial means to pay for these services upfront? Right. So through an RSA, you can request a voucher that you can and you can visit a school with that or the that office. You can visit that therapist's office and see if they will accept a voucher from the Department of Education.
And there's that one last question. Can you provide insight on how the referral process works for providers that want to refer families for additional supports in this area?
Stephanie, do you mean like how can service providers refer their clients to us? Because if that's the case, you can email us. However, unless we have written consent from the parent, we cannot reach out to them. So they can totally email us. They can call us. You could also send us an email and we'll keep a note so that we can keep, not keep a note, we can keep eye if the parent has emailed us or not. But generally speaking, you can email us and we could provide technical assistance to you and give you information so that you can share with the family, but we cannot reach out to the family unless there is written consent by the parent that we are allowed to do so.
Alrighty, so I don't see any more questions. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed our presentation on Special Education 101. A special thanks to our presenter for leading this webinar on such a great and important topic. Also, I did place a survey on the chat. If you do have a few seconds to complete that, we would really appreciate it. And again, if anybody has any questions that they would like to share with our presenter directly, please let us know and we'll get in contact with her, or you can contact them directly at the information that was shared on the chat and that was presented during the presentation. Thank
I
you.
saw
Yes.
a quick question come in again from Stephanie.
Oh, of course, yeah. I see.
Sorry,
No, no, you're fine.
after this we're done. But Stephanie, what you can do is if you and the parent are emailing, the parent can stay like I consent to my information being shared with AFC. I consent to them being contacted. But we can offer you technical assistance information to share with the parent. But you can do something like that where there is an email chain that the parent clearly states that they would like us to message them.
Thank you
And
so much. Oh. Oh, she says thank you. So thank you everybody again for joining us today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you to our present interpreter as well.
yeah, thank you, Anna.
Alrighty, have a good one, everybody. Bye bye.